The marble floors of the Carvalho estate stretched endlessly before me, each tile reflecting the cold morning light that filtered through floor-to-ceiling windows. My knees ached from 2 hours of scrubbing, the industrial-strength cleaner burning my nostrils with every breath. I'd learned to breathe through my mouth during tasks like these, a small adaptation among hundreds I'd made since arriving here 24 months ago. 2 years. 730 days of invisible existence in a world where visibility meant danger. I wrung out the cloth into the bucket, watching the water turn gray. The rhythm of cleaning had become meditative, almost comforting in its predictability. Dip, wring, scrub, repeat. No one expected conversation. No one expected eye contact. I was a shadow that tidied other shadows, and that suited me perfectly. Leonore, the study needs attention before noon. Isabel's voice cut through my thoughts. The head housekeeper materialized in the doorway, her steel-gray hair pulled into its usual severe bun. Mr. Carvalho has guests arriving at 1. I nodded without looking up, keeping my gaze fixed on a particularly stubborn scuff mark. Yes, ma'am. I'll finish here first. Her footsteps retreated down the hall, the click of sensible heels fading into the vast silence that always filled this house. 23 rooms, and most days it felt like a mausoleum. Beautiful, expensive, and utterly lifeless. Except when he was home. I pushed the thought away, rising to my feet with the practiced caution of someone whose body had learned to protest long days of physical labor. My lower back throbbed, a constant companion I'd stopped acknowledging. At 32, I felt decades older. The mirror in my small room off the kitchen showed a woman I barely recognized, thinner than I'd ever been, with shadows under hazel eyes that had once sparkled with ambition. That version of myself belonged to a different life. Before the debts, before the choices, before I'd answered an advertisement for live-in domestic help at an estate outside the city. No questions asked, cash payment, discretion required. I should have known better. But desperation makes fools of us all. The study door was already open when I arrived, and I paused at the threshold the way I always did, listening, observing, ensuring I wouldn't interrupt anything I shouldn't see. The room was empty, smelling of leather furniture and the faint citrus of expensive cologne that always lingered after Miguel Carvalho occupied a space. Mateo, they called him. Never to his face, of course. The nickname was whispered among the staff, part of the mythology that surrounded the man who owned this fortress of glass and stone. I'd heard the stories, everyone had. The accidents that befell his business rivals, the politicians who suddenly reversed their positions after private meetings, the way entire city blocks seemed to rearrange themselves around his interests. I didn't ask questions. I cleaned his study, prepared his coffee, and existed in the peripheral spaces of his life without ever truly touching it. Or so I'd believed. I began with the bookshelves, dusting each spine with careful precision. First editions, most of them, books in Portuguese, Italian, English, evidence of the multilingual education that had shaped him into the calculating strategist everyone feared. My fingers traced the leather binding of a volume on Renaissance warfare, and I wondered if he actually read these, or if they were simply expensive decoration. The desk came next. Massive mahogany, clear except for a laptop, a fountain pen, and a single photograph in a silver frame. I'd dusted that photo 1,000 times without really looking at it. A young boy with serious dark eyes standing beside an older man who shared his strong features. Father and son, I assumed. Both gone now, according to the fragmented conversations I'd overheard. I was reaching for the pen when I noticed the paper beneath it. My hand froze. It was a dossier. My name across the top. Leonore Maria Santos. Birth date, previous address, employment history, bank statements, everything. He'd investigated me, thoroughly. My heart hammered against my ribs, and I forced my hand to continue its motion. Dust the pen. Replace it exactly as it had been. Don't react. Don't show you've seen. Finish the job and get out. But my mind raced. How long had this file existed? Since I'd applied? Since my first day? Or had something triggered a deeper look into the woman who cleaned his floors and knew the layout of every room in his home? I completed the study in record time, my hands shaking slightly as I gathered my supplies. In the hallway, I nearly collided with Gonawalo, Mateo's head of security. He was a mountain of a man, always dressed in dark suits, always watching with eyes that registered everything. "Careful," he said, his voice surprisingly gentle for someone his size. But his gaze held mine a moment too long, and I knew. He knew I'd seen something. "Sorry," I mumbled, stepping around him. "Excuse me." I made it to my room before the trembling spread from my hands to my entire body. Sitting on the narrow bed, I tried to process what I'd discovered. The file meant he knew everything about me. The debt to the loan shark that had swallowed my grandmother's medical bills, the eviction notice, the desperation that had brought me here. He knew, and he'd hired me anyway. The question was, why? Lunch service passed in a blur. I helped Isabel prepare the dining room for Mateo's guests. Politicians, I gathered from the careful way she selected the wine. 3 men in expensive suits arrived precisely at 1, their laughter echoing through the foyer as Gonawalo escorted them to the dining room. And then he appeared. Miguel Carvalho descended the main staircase with the unhurried grace of someone who had never needed to rush because the world waited for him. 38, according to the file I'd seen, though he could have passed for younger despite the gray threading through his dark hair. He wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than I'd earn in a year, the white dress shirt beneath open at the collar, 4 buttons undone, revealing the hollow of his throat and the edge of a collarbone. I kept my eyes down as I passed him in the hall, carrying fresh linens for the guest powder room. But I felt his attention like a physical touch, a weight that followed my movement. "Leonore." My name and his voice stopped me mid-step. I'd heard him speak 1,000 times, to his men, on phone calls, to visitors. But he'd never addressed me directly, not once in 2 years. I turned slowly, keeping my gaze respectfully lowered. "Yes, Mr. Carvalho. The study. Tomorrow morning, 7 o'clock. We need to talk." My throat constricted. "Of course, sir." He nodded once and continued past me, leaving me frozen in the hallway with my heart trying to escape through my chest. "We need to talk." Those 4 words carried the weight of judgment, of endings, of consequences I couldn't yet see. That night I barely slept. My small room felt smaller than usual, the walls pressing in as I calculated my options. I could run, pack my few belongings and disappear before morning. But where would I go? The debt still existed. The loan shark didn't care about employment difficulties. And something else held me here, a truth I'd been avoiding for months. This house, for all its cold elegance, had become my refuge. The work was hard but predictable. Isabel demanded excellence but never cruelty. Even Gonawalo, with his constant vigilance, had never made me feel unsafe. I'd been invisible here, yes, but I'd also been protected. At 6:30, I rose and dressed in my usual black dress and white apron, pulling my chestnut hair into a neat bun. My reflection showed controlled features, no hint of the anxiety churning beneath my ribs, 2 years of practice in maintaining a neutral facade. The study door was closed when I arrived at 7. I knocked softly. "Enter." He sat behind the desk, backlit by the morning sun streaming through the windows. The effect was calculated, I realized, positioning himself so visitors faced the light, while he remained partially shadowed, readable only when he chose to be. "Close the door." Not a request. I obeyed, my hand steady on the handle despite the trembling in my knees. He gestured to one of the leather chairs facing the desk. "Sit." Sitting felt wrong. Staff didn't sit in his presence, but I lowered myself onto the edge of the chair, spine straight, hands folded in my lap, waiting. Miguel Carvalho studied me with the intensity I'd felt in the hallway, those dark eyes cataloging details with the precision of someone trained to miss nothing. The silence stretched until it became almost unbearable. Finally, he spoke. "You saw the file." Not a question, an observation. I considered lying, decided against it. "Yes, sir. Gonomolo told me your hands were shaking when you left the study. You're normally steadier." He leaned back in his chair. "What did you think when you saw it?" The question surprised me. I'd expected accusations, not curiosity. "I thought you knew more about me than I realized, sir." "And that frightened you?" "Yes." "Why?" I met his gaze then, abandoning the pretense of submission. If this conversation was happening, I might as well be honest. "Because people in your position don't keep detailed files on housekeepers unless they're watching for something. And I couldn't figure out what you were watching for." Something flickered in his expression. Approval. "Intelligent. Isabel said you were, but I wanted to confirm for myself." He opened a drawer and withdrew a folder. My file. "You've been here 2 years, 3 months, and 17 days. In that time, you've never taken a scheduled day off, never called in sick, never asked for an advance on your salary. You clean with a precision that suggests either obsessive-compulsive tendencies or a genuine respect for the work." He flipped through pages, not really reading them. "You hear things, see things. Men come and go from this house at all hours. Conversations happen in rooms you're cleaning. Documents get left on tables you clear." His eyes found mine again. "Yet, in 27 months, not once have you attempted to leverage that information. Not to me, not to anyone." My throat felt dry. "It wasn't my business." "No," he agreed, "it wasn't. But discretion is rare. Loyalty without expectation of reward, even rarer." He closed the file. "Why did you come here, Leonore?" "The truth." I'd rehearsed lies for this moment, safe explanations that wouldn't expose my vulnerability, but sitting across from a man who clearly already knew the answer, pretense felt pointless. "My grandmother raised me after my parents died. Last year she got sick. The bills piled up faster than I could work, and the bank wouldn't—" I stopped, steadying my voice. "I borrowed money from someone I shouldn't have. When I couldn't pay it back, he offered an alternative. Work for someone who needed discretion. Clear the debt through service. Joaquim Suarez." The name landed like a blow. "You know him?" "I know every predator who operates in this city." His voice held contempt. "Soares loans money to desperate people, then sells their labor to whoever pays. Usually that means criminal enterprises, brothels, drug operations, places where—" He paused, studying my face. "I paid Soares 4 times what he claimed you owed. Your debt has been cleared since your 2nd week here." The room tilted. "What? You heard me. But why? Why would you—" "Because I don't employ anyone under coercion." He said it simply, as if such principles were obvious. I needed domestic staff who could be trusted with what they might see or hear. Soares offered someone with no connections, no family to leverage, no apparent ambitions beyond survival. I paid your debt, then watched to see what kind of person you'd prove to be when the immediate pressure was gone. 27 months. Almost my entire time here. I'd been free and hadn't known it. "You could have left at any time," he continued. "The debt was satisfied. You chose to stay." I had. Week after week, month after month, continuing to clean and serve and exist in the margins of his dangerous world. Because this house, for all its cold elegance, had been safer than anything I'd known in years. "I have a proposition for you," Mateo said, and I heard the shift in his voice, the moment we moved from revelation to negotiation. But first, you need to understand exactly who I am and what I do. No more pretending you don't see, no more comfortable ignorance. My pulse quickened. I'm not sure I want to know. That option ended when Suarez sold you to me. You're already entangled, whether you've acknowledged it or not. He rose from his chair, moving to the window. Backlit again, his silhouette strong and unyielding. My family built its fortune through import-export businesses. Legitimate operations that generated legitimate wealth. But power attracts predators, and sometimes the law is slower than the threat. He turned to face me. My grandfather did what was necessary to protect what was ours. Over time, those protective measures became their own enterprise. By the time my father inherited, the Carvalho family was deeply embedded in systems that operated outside legal boundaries. Security services, information brokerage, strategic consultation for people who needed problems solved without official channels. Such careful language, such precise euphemisms for violence. I inherited the business when I was 26. My father and brother died in what was ruled an accident. His expression remained neutral, but I heard the weight beneath those words. It wasn't. It was a message from competitors who thought a young, inexperienced heir would be easy to manipulate or remove. They were wrong. Yes, simple. Final. I consolidated power, eliminated threats, and established clear parameters. The Carvalho operations are now focused on information, influence, and strategic positioning. We don't traffic in drugs or human misery. We solve problems that traditional systems can't or won't address. And we do it with ruthless efficiency. He moved closer, and I fought the urge to retreat. I'm telling you this because I need you to understand what staying here means. Not as a housekeeper, as something more. I don't understand. You will. But first, he reached into his jacket and withdrew a small device. Are you recording this conversation? No. The question shocked me. Are you wearing a wire? Working with law enforcement? Absolutely not. He nodded, apparently satisfied. Then here's my proposition. Recent intelligence suggests someone in my household is feeding information to rivals. Small leaks so far. Schedules, meeting locations, nothing critical. But it will escalate. It always does. Understanding dawned cold and clear. You think I'm the leak? No. He said it with absolute certainty. You're one of 3 people I'm certain isn't compromised. You, because you've had countless opportunities and taken none. Isabel, because she's been with my family for 30 years. And Gonemonfolo, because he'd take a bullet for me. Then why? Because I need someone invisible. Someone who moves through this house without drawing attention. Someone who can watch, listen, and report what they observe without anyone suspecting. His gaze held mine. I need you to stop being just the housekeeper. I need you to become my eyes and ears. A spy. He wanted me to be a spy. And if I say no, then you leave. Today. I'll provide 6 months' salary as severance, a reference letter, and transportation anywhere you want to go. He paused. But once you leave, my protection leaves with you. And there are people who know you worked here, who might see value in whatever information you possess, willing or not. The trap was elegant. Refuse, and I'd be vulnerable. Accept, and I'd be complicit in whatever he did. Why would you trust me with this? You barely know me. I know enough. You're intelligent, observant, and you've already proven your discretion. More importantly, his expression softened, almost imperceptibly. You're one of the few people in my life who doesn't want something from me. That's valuable. I thought of my small room, the predictable rhythm of my days, the safety of invisibility. Then I thought of Joaquim Suarez and men like him, circling anyone who showed weakness. What would this entail exactly? Continue your regular duties, but pay attention to inconsistencies. Who asks questions they shouldn't? Who goes where they shouldn't be? Who communicates with people outside the estate? Report to me directly, no one else. And when you find the traitor? His silence was answer enough. I looked at my hands, folded in my lap. Ordinary hands that had cleaned this house for 27 months. Hands that had never harmed anyone, never reached for power, never grasped for more than survival. But survival, I was learning, had its own cost. I raised my eyes to meet his. I want something in return. Surprise flickered across his features. Name it. If I do this, if I help you find whoever is betraying you, I want the truth. All of it. No more euphemisms. No more careful language. I want to know exactly what I'm part of. For the first time since I'd entered the study, Miguel Carvalho smiled. It transformed his face, revealing the man beneath the armor of power and control. Deal, he said, extending his hand across the desk. I hesitated only a moment before accepting it. His palm was warm, his grip firm but not crushing. The handshake sealed something between us, an understanding that we were no longer simply employer and employee. We were allies, and I had no idea that this decision, made in the morning light of his study, would irrevocably change everything I thought I knew about survival, loyalty, and the dangerous space between the two. The week following our conversation passed in a strange duality. Outwardly, nothing changed. I still rose at dawn to prepare the coffee service, still scrubbed floors and polished silver with the same meticulous attention, still moved through the Carvalho estate like a shadow among shadows. But everything had changed. I saw the house differently now, cataloging details I'd previously ignored. The way Francisco Moniz, Mateo's logistics coordinator, always angled his phone away when typing messages. How the night guard, Tomas Cruz, seemed nervous when Gonufalo passed. The subtle tension between Isabel and one of the newer housekeepers, a young woman named Beatrice, who asked too many questions about Mr. Carvalho's schedule. I kept mental notes of everything, waiting for patterns to emerge. 3 days in, I found Mateo in his study late at night, when I brought fresh towels for the guest room. He'd loosened his tie and rolled his sleeves, looking more human than I'd ever seen him. "Anything?" he asked without preamble. I hesitated at the doorway, still uncomfortable with this new dynamic. Francisco changes his behavior when you're in the room, more careful, like he's performing rather than just existing. I know. I've been watching him for months. He leaned back in his chair. But suspicion isn't proof. I need evidence before I move. What happens when you have proof? His expression went cold. Justice. My kind. I should have been horrified. Instead, I felt a detached curiosity. Have you always been this way? Comfortable with violence? No. The admission surprised me. When I was younger, I believed in systems, laws and courts and civilized resolution. Then my father and brother were murdered, and the investigation concluded it was an accident, despite clear evidence of sabotage. The system protected their killers because those killers had paid the right people. He stood, moving to the window overlooking the darkened grounds. I learned that power isn't about what the law says you can do. It's about what you're willing to do despite the law. Once I understood that, everything became simpler. Simpler how? There are people who deserve protection, people who deserve punishment. I provide both. He turned to face me. Does that frighten you? It should have. But I found myself considering the question seriously, weighing my answer. I think it should. But mostly it makes me sad. Sad that the world works this way, that good people have to become dangerous to survive. Something shifted in his expression. Recognition, perhaps, or understanding. Is that what you think I am? Good? I think you could have been, in a different life. I surprised myself with the honesty. But this world doesn't let people like us be good. It only lets us choose which kind of terrible we want to become. Silence settled between us, weighted with truths neither of us had expected to share. Finally, he nodded. Go. Get some rest. We have a long road ahead. I left him there, silhouetted against the window, a man alone in a house full of people who feared him. That night, I lay awake in my narrow bed, staring at the ceiling. Somewhere between accepting his proposition and this moment, I'd crossed an invisible line. I wasn't just observing anymore. I was participating. The thought should have kept me awake with anxiety. Instead, I felt a strange sense of purpose I hadn't experienced since before my grandmother's illness. For the first time in years, I mattered. Not as cheap labor or a convenient solution, but as someone whose observations and insights held value. Dangerous, perhaps, but intoxicating. The next morning brought unexpected visitors. I was arranging fresh flowers in the foyer when 3 black cars pulled up the circular drive. Gonavalo appeared instantly, his hand hovering near his jacket where I knew he kept a weapon. Inside, he said sharply to me. Now. I retreated to the kitchen, where Isabel was already instructing the staff to stay out of sight. Through the window, I watched men in expensive suits emerge from the cars. 7 of them, moving with the casual confidence of people accustomed to power. Who are they? I whispered to Isabel. Her mouth thinned into a disapproving line. Trouble. Mateo met them in the foyer, and I caught fragments of conversation through the swinging door. Unexpected visit, Duarte. Matters to discuss. Mutual interests. The voices moved to the formal sitting room, and I found myself gravitating toward the hallway, ostensibly to dust picture frames, but really to position myself where I might hear more. Leonor. Gonofalo's voice behind me made me jump. He wants coffee, 6 cups, the good service. I nodded, understanding the unspoken message. Mateo wanted me in the room, serving coffee, being invisible while gathering information. My hand stayed steady as I prepared the tray, years of practice allowing me to work on autopilot while my mind raced. This was a test, not just of my ability to gather intelligence, but of my nerve. The sitting room fell silent when I entered. 7 pairs of eyes tracked my movement as I placed the tray on the credenza and began pouring coffee with practiced precision. I kept my gaze down, my movements economical and quiet. You keep your staff well-trained, Carvalho, one of the men observed. He was perhaps 50, with silver hair and a smile that didn't reach his calculating eyes. Pretty, too. Does she understand Portuguese? She's standing right there. Ask her yourself. Mateo's voice held a warning edge. The silver-haired man, Duarte, I remembered, turned that cold smile on me. Do you speak Portuguese, menina? Sim, senor, I replied quietly, handing him his coffee. Sugar? Just black. He watched me with uncomfortable intensity. You're the one who replaced that clumsy girl who kept breaking things? I don't know who you mean, sir. I've been here over 2 years. 2 years. He exchanged a look with another man. Long time for domestic staff in this household. Most don't last 6 months. I said nothing, finishing the service and moving to leave. But his next words stopped me. I knew someone named Santos once, Leonor Santos. Worked at a hospital before her grandmother got sick, and she took on some unfortunate debts. Ice flooded my veins. He knew. Not just my name, but details about my life. Mateo's voice cut through my paralysis. That will be all, Leonor. Thank you. I left the room with measured steps, not allowing myself to run despite the fear clawing up my throat. In the kitchen, I gripped the edge of the counter, forcing air into my lungs. They knew who I was, which meant they'd investigated the staff, which meant, breathe. Mateo's voice from behind me. I hadn't heard him enter. They're playing games, trying to unsettle me by showing they've done their homework on my household. It's working. My voice shook despite my efforts to control it. He knows things about me. Personal things. I know. His hand settled briefly on my shoulder, the first time he'd deliberately touched me since that handshake in his study. It's a demonstration of reach. Duarte wants me to understand he can access information about anyone in my orbit. Why? Because he's considering whether to wage war or propose an alliance. He moved to stand beside me, both of us facing the window overlooking the grounds. My refusal to join his coalition has made me either a potential threat or a potential asset. He hasn't decided which yet. And me? Where does knowing about me fit into that calculation? Mateo's jaw tightened. It's leverage. A way to suggest that the people around me are vulnerable, that my protection has limits. Fury replaced fear, hot and unexpected. I'm not a weapon to be used against you. No, he agreed quietly. You're not. Which is why I'm going to make something very clear to Duarte before he leaves. He turned to face me fully, and I saw something dangerous in his expression. Not anger exactly, but cold calculation. You're under my protection, explicitly. Anyone who touches you touches me. That message will be delivered before they reach their cars. That will make me a target. You were already a target the moment you walked into this house. His voice gentled slightly. Now you're a protected target. There's a difference. The visitors left an hour later. I watched from my window as Gonzalo spoke with Duarte beside the lead car, his posture relaxed but unmistakably threatening. Whatever message Mateo wanted delivered, Gonzalo was ensuring it landed clearly. That evening, I found an envelope on my pillow. Inside was a mobile phone, new, expensive, with only one number programmed into it. Mateo's. I turned the device over in my hands, understanding the significance. Direct communication. No intermediaries, a level of access typically reserved for his inner circle. The phone buzzed almost immediately. If you ever feel unsafe, call. Day or night, no question. I stared at the message, something warm and terrifying unfurling in my chest. This man who ruled through fear and calculation was extending protection that went beyond our arrangement. This was personal. I typed a reply. Why me? His response came quickly. Because you didn't ask for any of this. You just wanted to survive. I respect that. And then, get some rest. Tomorrow we accelerate the investigation. I didn't rest. Instead, I lay in bed with the phone in my hand, feeling the weight of trust I'd never asked for, but was beginning to want. The next 2 weeks brought a subtle shift in the household dynamic. Mateo began including me in more meetings, ostensibly to serve refreshments, but really to observe. I watched him navigate conversations with politicians, business associates, and the occasional individual whose purpose was never explicitly stated. He was brilliant at it, the way he guided discussions, revealing nothing while extracting everything, how he used silence as a weapon, letting others fill the void with information they shouldn't share. The calculated moments of charm that made people feel valued, seen, important, right before he dismissed them without a second thought. I learned his patterns. 3 cups of coffee before noon, always black. The way he rolled his shoulders when a conversation frustrated him. How his left hand would tap twice against his thigh when he was about to deliver bad news. Small tells that revealed the human beneath the armor. You're staring. His voice cut through my observations one afternoon. The study was empty except for us, golden light slanting through windows. Observing, I corrected. You told me to pay attention. And to others, not to me. You're part of the environment I'm mapping. I set down the coffee pot. Besides, if I'm going to report on inconsistencies, I need to know what consistency looks like for you. A smile ghosted across his lips. Clever. Practical. He leaned back in his chair, studying me with the same intensity I'd been directing at him. What have you observed about me, then? The question felt like a test. I considered lying, offering safe observations. Instead, I chose honesty. You're lonelier than you let anyone see. You've built walls so high that even the people closest to you can't reach the person inside. And sometimes, late at night when you think everyone's asleep, you stand at that window and look like you're searching for something you lost a long time ago. The silence that followed was absolute. I'd gone too far, revealed too much of what I'd noticed, stripped away his carefully maintained facade. Then he said, very quietly, "Yes." Just that, an acknowledgement that felt more intimate than anything we'd shared before. "I need to tell you something." He stood, moving to the window as if drawn by my mention of it. "About the investigation. We've narrowed the suspects to 3 people: Francisco, Tomas, and someone in your position." My breath caught. Someone who cleans? Someone who has access to private spaces and is beneath notice. He turned to face me. "Beatrice, the new housekeeper. She's been asking Isabel questions about my schedule, my habits, which rooms I use most frequently." I thought of the young woman who'd been hired 6 weeks ago. Quiet, efficient, with eyes that watched everything. "You think she's the leak?" "I think she's the most likely candidate, but I need proof." His gaze held mine. "I need you to befriend her. Get close. Find out who she's really working for." The request settled heavy in my stomach. "You want me to spy on another woman who's probably just as desperate as I was when I came here?" "I want you to help me identify a threat before it gets someone killed." His voice hardened. "This isn't a game, Leonor. Whoever is feeding information to my enemies is putting everyone in this household at risk, including you." He was right. I knew he was right. But the thought of manipulating someone's trust, of becoming the kind of person who used another's vulnerability, it made me feel sick. "I'll do it," I said finally. "But if she's innocent, then she goes free with a generous severance and my apology. But if she's guilty..." He left the sentence unfinished, the implication clear. That night, I lay awake again, the phone within reach, wondering when exactly I'd stopped being a victim of circumstance and started being an active participant in Mateo Carvalho's dangerous world, and why, despite everything, I didn't want to leave. Befriending Beatrice proved easier than I'd anticipated. She was young, 23 at most, with nervous hands that never quite stayed still, and eyes that darted toward exits whenever Gonomalo entered a room. Recognizing desperation had become second nature to me. I saw it in the way she accepted extra shifts without complaint, in how she stretched her lunch portions to make them last, in the careful way she counted coins before buying necessities. I saw myself 2 years ago. "You're good at the corners," I observed one morning as we worked adjacent hallways. "Isabel's particular about those." Beatrice glanced up, surprise flickering across her delicate features. Most staff didn't initiate conversation. "My mother taught me. She cleaned houses when I was growing up." "Mine too." The lie came smoothly. My mother had been a teacher before the accident, but Beatrice didn't need to know that. There's an art to it, making yourself invisible while making everything else shine. A small smile touched her lips. Exactly. Over the following days, I cultivated the friendship carefully, shared meals in the staff kitchen, offered tips on dealing with Isabel's exacting standards. created a space where Beatrice felt safe enough to lower her guard. And slowly, carefully, I began asking questions. Do you have family in the city? A younger brother. He's sick, respiratory condition. The medication is expensive. Of course. Always something desperate, something that made people vulnerable to exploitation. How did you hear about this position? A pause, just a fraction too long. Through an agency. They said Mr. Carvalho paid well and didn't ask too many questions about references. The same route I'd taken. The same pipeline that funneled desperate people into positions where their loyalty could be tested or their desperation exploited. Do they check in with you? The agency? Another pause. Sometimes. To make sure everything's satisfactory. I reported the conversation to Matteo that evening, finding him in his study with paperwork spread across the desk. The top buttons of his shirt were undone, his tie discarded, hair slightly disheveled from running his hands through it. He looked exhausted. She's being handled, he said after I finished. The agency is a front. They place vulnerable people in strategic positions, then offer them money for information. You knew this when you hired her? I suspected. Now I'm certain. He leaned back, rubbing his eyes. The question is who's running the operation. Once we know that, we can eliminate the threat. Eliminate. I kept my voice neutral. You mean kill. His gaze met mine, unflinching. I mean neutralize. Whether that requires killing depends on how reasonable they prove to be. I should have felt horror. Instead, I felt a strange detachment, as if we were discussing weather patterns rather than human lives. And Beatrice? What happens to her? That depends on what she does next. If she's just a desperate woman trying to help her brother, there may be mercy. If she's actively working against us... He left the implication hanging. I moved to the window, the same spot where he so often stood. From here, the ground stretched into darkness, only the perimeter lights marking the boundaries of his controlled world. When does it end? The threats? The vigilance? The constant calculation? It doesn't. His voice came from close behind me, though I hadn't heard him move. This is what I am, what I've chosen to be. There's no retirement, no peaceful future. Just the next threat, the next challenge, the next person who needs to be managed or eliminated. I turned, finding him closer than expected. Close enough to see the fine lines around his eyes, the shadow of stubble along his jaw, the weariness that no amount of control could fully mask. Don't you ever want something different? Want? A bitter smile. Wanting is a luxury I gave up a long time ago. I have obligations, responsibilities, a legacy to maintain. Personal desires are irrelevant. That's a lonely way to exist. Yes, he agreed softly. It is. The moment stretched between us, charged with something unspoken. Then he stepped back, breaking the connection. Continue working on Beatrice, but be careful. If she suspects you're investigating her, she might do something desperate. I nodded and left, feeling the weight of his loneliness following me down the hall. 3 days later, everything changed. I was in the linen closet, counting sheets and pillowcases for inventory, when I heard voices in the adjacent storage room. Male voices, speaking in rapid Portuguese. Tuesday night. He'll be alone in the study. Sure, the cameras will be disabled. Make it look like suicide. The family has history. My blood turned to ice. I pressed closer to the wall, barely breathing, trying to identify the speakers through the thin barrier. Payment on delivery. Duarte wants confirmation. Duarte, the silver-haired man who'd known my name, my history. The one testing whether to make Matteo an ally or eliminate him as a threat. Apparently, he'd decided. The voices moved away, and I waited until silence settled before emerging. My hands shook as I pulled out the phone Matteo had given me, typing quickly. Need to talk. Now. Urgent. His response came immediately. Study. 5 minutes. I made it there in 3, not caring who saw me moving with unusual speed. Gonawalo stood outside the door, his expression sharpening when he saw me. He's expecting you. He opened the door, and I caught something in his eyes. Respect, perhaps, or acknowledgement that I'd become more than just staff. Matteo was on his feet before I finished closing the door. What happened? I told him everything. The overheard conversation. The mention of Tuesday night. Duarte's name. The plan to make it look like suicide. Words tumbled out in a rush. My professional composure cracking under the weight of fear. Not fear for myself. Fear for him. When I finished, he moved to his desk, pressing a button that I now knew activated a communication system throughout the house. Gonfalo, Francisco, emergency protocol, my office, now. Then he turned to me, his expression unreadable. You saved my life. They haven't acted yet. They will. Tuesday is 3 days away. If you hadn't overheard this, if you hadn't been paying attention. He stopped, something raw flickering across his features before control reasserted itself. Thank you. The words felt inadequate for what had just transpired. I'd crossed another line without realizing it. From observer to active protector. From someone seeking safety to someone willing to provide it. Gonwalo and Francisco entered within moments, their expressions grim. Matteo repeated what I'd told him, his voice cold and analytical, discussing his own planned assassination with the detachment of a chess player analyzing an opponent's strategy. We need to identify who's inside, Francisco said. Someone disabled the cameras. Someone gave them the security codes. Tomas, Gonambalo said immediately. He's been nervous for weeks. Won't meet my eyes. Bring him in, quietly. Matteo's voice held lethal certainty. And increase security around Leonore. If they realize she overheard them, she becomes a target. I can take care of myself, I protested. 3 sets of eyes turned to me. Gonmalo's skeptical, Francisco's amused, Matteo's concerned. Against trained killers? Matteo shook his head. You're brave, but bravery without training is just a faster way to die. You'll have protection, non-negotiable. He was right, and I hated it. Hated the reminder of my vulnerability, of how little I could actually do despite my newfound involvement in his world. What about Beatrice? I asked. If there's going to be increased security, if things escalate, she might run. Let her. Matteo's expression hardened. She's small fish. Whoever hired her is the real target. Once we deal with Duarte and his people, we'll handle the cleanup. The next 3 days passed in surreal tension. True to Matteo's word, I was never alone. Gonawalo, or one of his men, shadowed me constantly, their presence both comforting and suffocating. I continued my work, maintaining the pretense of normalcy, but everyone in the household felt the shift. Something was coming. Tuesday morning dawned gray and cold. Matteo called me to his study at dawn, before the rest of the staff woke. He stood at the window, his familiar position, dressed in dark slacks and a white shirt with the top 4 buttons undone, looking like a man preparing for battle. I need you to leave, he said without preamble. Gonwalo will take you to a safe house outside the city. You'll stay there until this is resolved. No. He turned, surprise registering. This isn't a request. Leonore. I know. I moved closer, meeting his gaze steadily. And I'm still saying no. You need someone you trust inside the house. Someone who can observe and report if things go wrong. That's me. If things go wrong, you could die. So could you. The words hung between us, heavy with implication. I'm not leaving you to face this alone. Something shifted in his expression. Vulnerability breaking through the armor. Why? Why would you risk yourself for me? The question demanded honesty. I thought about the past weeks, the gradual transformation from employer and employee to something deeper, more complicated. The way his rare smiles made my breath catch, how his loneliness mirrored my own, the strange sense of belonging I'd found in his dangerous world. Because somewhere along the way, you stopped being just the person who gave me a job, I said quietly. You became someone I care about protecting, even if you don't need it, even if it's foolish. He closed the distance between us in 2 strides, his hands coming up to frame my face. Leonore. The moment shattered as Gonawalo burst through the door. We have a problem. Tomas is gone, fled sometime during the night. Mateo's hands dropped, his expression shuddering back into cold control. Timeline? They'll move up the attack, possibly today. Gonawalo's voice was grim. They know we know. Then we prepare. Mateo's voice carried absolute authority. Standard defensive protocol. Everyone armed. Leonore goes to the safe room. The safe room, I repeated. There's a safe room. Behind the wine cellar. Steel reinforced, supplied for 2 weeks. Independent communication system. He turned to me. You'll be secure there no matter what happens up here. And you'll be exposed while I hide? I shook my head. That's final. His voice brooked no argument. Gonofalo, take her now. The security chief moved toward me, but I stepped back. Wait, what about Isabel? Beatrice? The other staff? Isabel knows about the safe room. She'll join you. The others, Mateo's jaw tightened, are being evacuated now. Only essential personnel remain. Beatrice could be part of this. She is already gone. Francisco appeared in the doorway. Fled with Tomas. We found her room empty, phone destroyed. So she had been guilty. The knowledge sat heavy in my stomach. Another person ground up by the machinery of desperate circumstances and ruthless manipulation. Please. Mateo's voice softened. Go to the safe room. Let me know you're secure so I can focus on what needs to be done. The please broke me. This man who commanded without question, who ruled through fear and calculation, was asking, not ordering. Asking. Promise me you'll be careful, I said. I promise. His hand found mine, squeezing once. Now go. Gonwalo led me through the house, moving with the fluid efficiency of someone executing a well-rehearsed plan. Isabel appeared from the kitchen, her usual severity replaced by sharp-eyed alertness. She nodded to me without surprise. Clearly, she'd been briefed on emergency protocols long ago. The wine cellar was exactly what it appeared to be until Gonwalo pressed a specific sequence on the temperature control panel. A section of wall slid aside, revealing a small room equipped like a bunker. Beds, supplies, a bank of monitors showing feeds from cameras throughout the house. Stay here. Don't open the door for anyone but me or Mr. Carvalho. If something happens to both of us. He hesitated. There's an escape tunnel. Comes out 1/2 mile from the property. Francisco knows to check it if things go wrong. Then he was gone, the wall sliding shut with a sound of finality that made my chest tight. Isabel moved to the monitors immediately, her fingers flying over controls with practiced ease. He's had this room for 5 years, she said without looking at me. Since the attempt on his father and brother. Swore he'd never be caught unprepared again. I joined her at the monitors, watching as men took positions throughout the house. Mateo stood in the foyer, Gonawalo beside him, both armed with weapons they held with disturbing familiarity. He cares for you, Isabel said quietly. I've been with this family for 30 years. Never seen him look at anyone the way he looks at you. I'm just more than staff, more than an employee. Don't insult my intelligence by pretending otherwise. She finally turned to face me, her severe features softened by something almost maternal. Whatever happens today, know that you've given him something he hasn't had in a long time. Something worth fighting for beyond duty and vengeance. Before I could respond, movement on the monitors drew our attention. 3 cars approaching the gate. Black sedans, tinted windows, moving with predatory purpose. It was beginning. The cars stopped at the gate, their engines idling in a formation that spoke of military precision. On the monitor, I watched Matteo and Gonamvalo exchange a glance, some wordless communication passing between them. Then Matteo pressed a button on the intercom panel near the door. "Duarte, I've been expecting you." The response crackled through the speaker system, the silver-haired man's voice carrying false warmth. "Then you'll understand why I'm here. We need to discuss your future, or lack thereof. By all means, come inside. Let's discuss it like civilized men." Matteo's voice held dark amusement. "Unless you prefer to conduct business in the driveway like common thugs." A pause. Then, "You're very confident for a man who's outnumbered." "Am I?" Matteo gestured, and suddenly men appeared from positions I hadn't noticed. Behind pillars, in alcoves, on the second-floor balcony. 12 of them, all armed, all positioned with clear lines of fire. "I stopped being easy to kill years ago, Duarte. You should have done better research." The tension on the monitors was palpable. Duarte's men shifted, hands moving toward weapons. One wrong move and the foyer would become a killing ground. "Stand down," Duarte ordered his men. Then, to Matteo. "It seems we both came prepared. Perhaps that conversation is warranted after all." "Alone," Matteo specified. "You and me, my study. Everyone else stays exactly where they are." "Agreed." Isabel sucked in a sharp breath. "He's walking into a trap." "Or setting one," I countered, watching Matteo's body language on the screen. He moved with absolute confidence, no hint of fear or hesitation. He knew this was coming. He's prepared. We watched as Matteo and Duarte walked toward the study, Gonamvalo shadowing them from a careful distance. The cameras didn't extend into Matteo's private office, a deliberate blind spot, I realized, designed to prevent exactly the kind of surveillance Beatrice had likely been attempting. For 10 minutes, nothing happened. The men in the foyer maintained their positions, weapons held but not aimed, in a tense detente that could shatter at any moment. I found myself gripping the edge of the monitor console, barely breathing. Then a single gunshot cracked through the speakers. "No," I breathed, my heart stopping. "No, no, no." Isabel's hand clamped on my arm. "Wait, look." The study door opened. Matteo emerged, alone, his white shirt now bearing a spray of crimson across one shoulder. But he was walking, steady and controlled. Behind him, Gonamvalo appeared, weapon drawn. "Duarte made his choice," Matteo announced to the assembled men, his voice carrying clearly. "He drew a weapon in my home, in my study, under the pretense of negotiation." He paused, letting the implication sink in. His men have 2 options. Leave now, peacefully, and this ends here. Or stay, and share his fate. The silence stretched. Then, one by one, Duarte's men began backing toward the door. Not running, that would have been seen as weakness, but retreating with strategic precision. "Smart," Gonamvalo observed, watching them go. Duarte didn't inspire enough loyalty to die for. Within minutes, the cars were gone, leaving only the lingering smell of gun smoke and the weight of what had just occurred. Matteo stood in the foyer, surveying the scene with the detached calm of someone accustomed to violence. Then his gaze found the camera I was watching through, and something in his expression shifted. He knew I'd seen everything, knew I'd witnessed him kill a man in cold blood, then calmly negotiate the retreat of that man's subordinates. He knew, and he was waiting to see how I'd react. "I need to go to him," I said. moving toward the door. Isabel blocked my path. Gonwalo hasn't given the all clear. Could still be threats. I don't care. I met her eyes. He needs to know he's not alone in this, that I'm not going to run screaming just because I saw what he had to do. Understanding flickered across her severe features. She stepped aside. The override code is 72392, but if you get yourself killed, I'll tell him I tried to stop you. The wall slid open and I ran, through the wine cellar, up the stairs, emerging into the main house where Gonwalo was directing cleanup. He started toward me, but Mateo's voice stopped him. Let her through. I found him in the study, standing by the window in his familiar position, though now his shirt was stained and his hands showed faint traces of blood he'd clearly tried to wash off. The room smelled of cordite and something metallic. You shouldn't be here, he said without turning. There's still... I don't care about the blood, or the body, or whatever protocol says I should be horrified by. I moved to stand beside him. I care that you're standing there thinking you have to face this alone. He finally looked at me, and I saw exhaustion in every line of his face. You watched. Yes. And you came anyway. Yes. Why? The question held genuine confusion. You saw what I am, what I'm capable of. You saw me kill a man without hesitation. I saw you eliminate a threat who came to kill you. I touched his arm, feeling tension coiled in every muscle. There's a difference. Is there? His voice cracked slightly. Or is that just what I tell myself to sleep at night? This was the man beneath the armor. Uncertain, questioning, carrying the weight of every life he'd taken in service of survival. I'd glimpsed this vulnerability before, but never so nakedly exposed. Come here, I said, tugging gently on his arm. He resisted briefly, then allowed me to guide him to the leather sofa. Up close, I could see the spray pattern on his shirt was finer than I'd thought. Defensive blood, not his own. Relief flooded through me. You're not hurt? Barely touched. He gestured dismissively. Duarte was arrogant, drew his weapon while talking, gave me time to react. Classic mistake. You could have died. I've been prepared to die since I was 26 years old. He leaned back, closing his eyes. Death is part of the business. The only uncertainty is when and how. That's a horrible way to live. It's the only way I know how. I sat beside him, close enough that our shoulders touched. Then maybe it's time to learn a different way. He opened his eyes, turning his head to look at me. And who exactly is going to teach me? You? Maybe. I held his gaze. If you'll let me. Something shifted in the air between us. Recognition, attraction, the acknowledgement of what had been building since that first conversation in his study. His hand came up to touch my face, thumb tracing my cheekbone with surprising gentleness. You should run from me, Leonore. Find somewhere safe, far from this world. I tried safe. It was lonely. I leaned into his touch. Besides, who says you're not safe? I've killed people. I'll kill again. There's nothing safe about me. You've also protected people, paid debts you didn't owe, given chances when you could have simply eliminated threats. I covered his hand with mine. You're more complicated than you let yourself believe. He studied me with intensity that made my breath catch. If I kiss you right now, everything changes. You understand that? I understand. You'll become a target. Anyone who wants to hurt me will see you as leverage. I'm already a target. You said so yourself. This would make it worse. Make you... He stopped, struggling with words. Make you mine in ways that can't be undone. The possessiveness in his voice should have alarmed me. Instead, it sent heat coursing through my veins. And if that's what I want, his control fractured. He pulled me closer, his mouth finding mine with desperate hunger. The kiss was nothing like I'd imagined. Not practiced seduction, but raw need, as if he'd been starving and I was sustenance. His hands tangled in my hair, tilting my head to deepen the kiss, and I responded with equal fervor, pressing closer despite the blood on his shirt, despite everything we'd just witnessed. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against mine. "This is madness." "Probably. You deserve better than a man who smells like gun smoke and can't promise you tomorrow." I deserve to choose. I pulled back enough to meet his eyes. "And I choose this. I choose you." The vulnerability in his expression nearly broke me. "Why?" "Because you're lonely. Because I'm lonely. Because somewhere in the past weeks, I stopped seeing the Mafia boss everyone fears and started seeing the man who stands at windows searching for something he lost. Because you make me feel alive in ways I haven't felt since before desperation became my constant companion." I touched his face, feeling stubble rough against my palm. "Because you paid my debt without telling me. Because you protect people who have no one else. Because beneath all the violence and control, you're just a man trying to survive a world that killed everyone you loved." "Leonore." My name in his voice held wonder and warning. "I know what I'm choosing. I know the risks. I'm choosing anyway." He kissed me again, gentler this time, with a tenderness that contradicted everything I'd just witnessed. When he finally pulled away, his eyes held determination I recognized. The same look he wore when making impossible decisions. "If we do this, there are rules." "Of course there are." I almost smiled. "You stay in this house, under my protection, explicitly and publicly." "I already do that." "Not like this, not as..." He seemed to struggle with the word. "As someone important to me, someone under my personal care." "Your mistress," I said bluntly. "My partner." The correction was firm. Not a possession, not a plaything. An equal in every way that matters, even if the world won't see it that way. The distinction mattered. I could see it in his eyes, the need to give me agency even as he claimed me. "And what does this partnership look like practically?" "You move to better quarters, the suite adjacent to mine." His hand traced patterns on my back. "You continue your work if you want, but your safety becomes my primary concern. You attend events with me when appropriate. You're involved in decisions that affect the household." "And in private?" Heat flickered in his gaze. "In private, you're mine and I'm yours. Completely." The possessiveness should have frightened me. Instead, it ignited something primal and fundamental. The recognition of being claimed by someone powerful enough to protect what was his. "Yes," I said simply. Relief and triumph warred in his expression. He pulled me close again, but this time his kiss was interrupted by Gonamuelo's discreet cough from the doorway. "Boss, we need to debrief, and you should change. There are calls coming in. People heard about the incident." Mateo sighed, pressing one more kiss to my forehead before releasing me. "Go pack your things. I'll have Francisco help move you to the new rooms." All my things fit in one bag. Something dangerous flashed in his eyes. "Not anymore. Isabel has instructions to take you shopping tomorrow. Whatever you need, whatever you want. No arguments." "Mateo." "No arguments," he repeated firmly. "You're under my care now. That means you want for nothing." After he left with Gonamuelo, I remained on the sofa, trying to process what had just happened. In the span of an hour, I'd witnessed a killing, crossed every remaining line, and committed myself to a man who ruled through violence and strategy. I should have felt horror, fear, regret. Instead, I felt purpose, belonging. The strange certainty that despite everything, this was exactly where I was meant to be. Isabel found me there minutes later, her expression knowing. "The suite is ready. Francisco is waiting to escort you." "You knew," I said, "about him and me. I've known for weeks, the way he watched you, the way you tried not to watch him back." She almost smiled. "About time you both stopped pretending." The new suite was 3 times the size of my small room, with windows overlooking the gardens and furniture that spoke of wealth beyond anything I'd experienced. But it was the connecting door, locked now, but clearly leading to Mateo's private quarters, that made the reality sink in. This was permanent. This was real. I unpacked my few belongings, the single bag looking lost in the massive closet. Tomorrow, Isabel would help me fill it. Tomorrow, I'd begin learning how to navigate this new role. Tomorrow, I'd start becoming whoever Leonor Santos needed to be as partner to Miguel Carvalho. Tonight, I simply stood at the window, watching darkness settle over the grounds, and wondered if I'd made the wisest choice of my life, or signed my own death warrant. The quiet knock at the connecting door interrupted my thoughts. I opened it to find Mateo, freshly showered and wearing only dark slacks, his chest bare and marked with old scars I'd never seen before. "Can't sleep," he admitted. "Kept thinking you'd come to your senses and run." "I don't run anymore." I stepped aside, letting him enter. "Besides, where would I go that you wouldn't find me?" He smiled, genuine this time, reaching his eyes. "Nowhere. I'd hunt you to the ends of the earth. Possessive. Absolutely." He pulled me close, and I felt the steady rhythm of his heartbeat against my cheek. "But you knew that when you said yes." We stood there in the darkness, 2 people who'd found unexpected refuge in each other's arms, while the world outside continued its dangerous dance. For tonight, at least, we had this: warmth, connection, the fragile beginning of something that might become love, if we survived long enough. The next morning brought an unexpected normalcy. I woke in my new suite, sunlight streaming through windows that overlooked gardens I'd only ever seen while working. For a moment, I forgot where I was. Then memory returned in a rush. The shooting, the kiss, the choice I'd made. Mateo. A soft knock preceded Isabel's entrance with a breakfast tray. She surveyed me with her usual efficiency, but something had softened in her severe features. "Mr. Carvalho is in meetings all morning. He asked that I take you shopping after you eat." "That's really not necessary." "It's absolutely necessary." She set the tray on the table by the window. "You're no longer staff. Your wardrobe needs to reflect your new position. Besides," her expression warmed almost imperceptibly, "he left his card with specific instructions that you're not to worry about cost." And the breakfast was elaborate. Fresh pastries, fruit, coffee that smelled like heaven. I ate mechanically, my mind already spinning through implications. If I was no longer staff, what exactly was I? Partner, Mateo had said. But partner in what sense? The question haunted me through the morning shopping expedition. Isabel drove us into the city in a sleek Mercedes, pointing out boutiques I'd never dared enter before. Inside the first one, sales associates materialized with champagne and compliments, treating me like someone important, rather than someone they'd have previously ignored. "What colors does Mr. Carvalho prefer?" one asked, holding up elegant dresses. "I have no idea." The admission felt strange. I knew how he took his coffee, how he organized his desk, which books he actually read versus which were just for show, but his taste in women's fashion remained a mystery. "He likes you," Isabel said practically. "That's what matters. Now, we need cocktail dresses for events, casual, elegant pieces for daily wear, and at least 2 formal gowns." My head spun with the quantities she ordered: silk blouses, tailored pants, dresses in jewel tones that brought out my eyes, shoes that cost more than a month's former salary. Each time I protested, Isabel simply reminded me of Mateo's instructions: whatever I wanted, whatever I needed. By afternoon, we returned to the estate with the Mercedes full of packages. I felt simultaneously pampered and purchased, as if I'd been transformed into someone I didn't quite recognize. Gonwalo met us at the door, his expression grim. "Boss wants to see you. His study. Now." The tone sent ice through my veins. I followed him, leaving Isabel to manage the packages, my mind racing through possibilities. Had something happened? Had he reconsidered last night's decisions? Matteo stood at his window, that eternal position, but turned as I entered. Relief flooded his features. "You're safe." Why wouldn't I be? Because Duarte had partners. One of them made contact this morning with threats. He crossed to me, hands settling on my shoulders. "They know about you, about us. They're trying to leverage you against me." Fear coiled in my stomach. What kind of threats? The kind I won't allow to materialize. His voice hardened. "Gonwalo is doubling security. You won't leave the estate without my explicit permission, and even then, you'll have armed escorts. So, I'm a prisoner again. You're protected." He softened his grip. "There's a difference. This is temporary, until I neutralize the remaining threats from Duarte's network." "How long?" "Days, maybe weeks." His jaw tightened. "I'm sorry. I knew claiming you would make you a target, but I underestimated how quickly they'd move." The anguish in his voice made my anger dissolve. This wasn't about control. It was about fear. Fear for me. "What else?" He released me, moving back to the window. Francisco found evidence that the leak went deeper than Beatriz and Tomas. Someone else in the organization has been feeding information to rivals. Someone with access to my private calendar, my security arrangements, He stopped. My personal life. Understanding dawned cold and clear. "They knew about me before you made it public." "Yes. Which means they've been watching for months, waiting for the right leverage." He turned, his expression carved from stone. "I need to find them before they use you against me." "Let me help." "Absolutely not. You're already too exposed. I'm already a target either way." I moved to stand beside him. "But I'm also still invisible to most of your people. They see me as the former housekeeper who got lucky, not as someone with intelligence and observation skills. Let me use that." He studied me with intensity that made my skin prickle. "You want to investigate my own people. I want to protect what's mine." The possessiveness in my voice surprised us both. "You're mine now, remember? That means I defend you as fiercely as you defend me." A slow smile transformed his face. "Dangerous words, meu amor. What does that mean?" "My love." He touched my face gently. "You're learning Portuguese?" "I've been listening." I'd absorbed more than I realized during my time here. Phrases, inflections, the melodic cadence of his native language. "Teach me more." "Later. Right now." His expression grew serious again. "If you're going to investigate, you need to understand the players. Come." He led me to his desk, pulling up files on his computer. "These are my inner circle, the people with access to my private information." I leaned over his shoulder, studying faces and dossiers. Francisco Muniz, logistics coordinator. 42 with the family for 15 years. Gonwalo Reis, head of security. 38, former military, unshakable loyalty. Isabel Neves, household manager. 61, knew his mother, practically raised him after she died. None of them seem likely. That's the point. His hand found mine on the desk. Betrayal always comes from the least expected source. Someone you trust. Someone close enough to see vulnerabilities. Like me, I realized. I'd become that person, close enough to hurt him in ways enemies never could. The thought must have shown on my face because he squeezed my hand. I trust you completely. Never doubt that. Why? We've known each other such a short time. I've known you for 27 months. He pulled me onto his lap, the intimate gesture feeling natural despite its newness. I've watched how you handle stress, how you treat people, how you navigate impossible situations. I know your character, Leonore. That's more important than time. I leaned into him, feeling the solid warmth of his body. Tell me about your family, your father and brother. Tension coiled through him, but he didn't deflect. My father, Paolo, was brilliant. Strategic mind, ruthless when necessary, but with a code. He believed in protecting the vulnerable, punishing those who preyed on weakness. My brother, João, was supposed to inherit. He had father's charisma, his natural authority. I was the spare, expected to manage businesses while João took the empire. His voice grew distant. Then they died in a car accident that wasn't an accident. Brake lines cut, timed to coincide with a rainstorm. By the time anyone realized it wasn't mechanical failure, the evidence was gone. I'm sorry. I became something I never intended to be that day. A killer, a strategist. A man willing to do whatever necessary to protect what remained. His arms tightened around me. I found everyone responsible. Took me 2 years, and I made sure they understood exactly why they were dying. The matter-of-fact way he discussed murder should have disturbed me. Instead, I felt the weight of his grief, the burden of responsibilities thrust upon him by violence. Do you ever wish it had been different? That you'd stayed the spare, had a normal life? Every day, the admission was barely whispered. But wishing changes nothing. This is my life now, my choice to make the best of it. We sat in silence, wrapped in each other's arms, two people carrying scars from worlds that chewed up the vulnerable and spit out survivors. The following days fell into a strange rhythm. Matteo worked from the estate, conducting business while keeping me close. I wandered the house with new eyes, observing patterns I'd never noticed before. Who spoke to whom, who avoided certain topics, who seemed nervous when Matteo entered rooms. I reported everything to him each evening, our debriefings taking place in his study or my suite, often interrupted by moments of intimacy that grew increasingly natural. He was teaching me Portuguese, practical phrases mixed with endearments that made me blush. I was teaching him to relax, to laugh, to find moments of lightness in his dark world. You're different, Gonamalo observed one afternoon when I brought coffee to a meeting. Happier. So is he, I replied, watching Matteo through the study windows. Maybe we're good for each other. Maybe you are. The security chief's expression grew serious. But be careful. People notice, and some don't like seeing the boss distracted. The warning settled heavy in my chest. Who specifically? Francisco has been asking questions, subtle ones, but questions nonetheless. About your relationship, about how much influence you have. I filed the information away, another piece in the puzzle we were assembling. That evening, I mentioned it to Matteo. His expression darkened. Francisco has been with me for 15 years. I can't believe... He stopped, reconsidering. But that's how betrayal works, isn't it? The people closest hurt you deepest. Let me watch him, carefully, without him knowing. Over the next week, I made myself useful around Francisco, offering coffee during his meetings, tidying nearby rooms, existing in that invisible servant space I knew so well. And slowly, carefully, I noticed things. The way he angled his phone away when texting, how he made frequent trips to his car for calls that didn't show in the estate's phone logs. The nervous energy when Gonfalo entered rooms. Small tells that alone meant nothing but together painted a picture. But I needed proof. something concrete. The opportunity came when Francisco left his tablet in the conference room. I hesitated. Going through someone's private device crossed a line even for me. But Mateo's safety outweighed my discomfort. The tablet was encrypted, but Francisco had left it open, perhaps in haste. I navigated to his messages, photographing screens with the phone Mateo had given me. Conversations with unknown numbers, references to packages and deliveries that didn't match any legitimate business. And one message that made my blood run cold. The girl is the weakness. Use her to force his hand. I showed Mateo the photos that evening, watching fury transform his features from human to something far more dangerous. He's been planning this for months. Mateo's voice was deadly calm, using my trust, my organization, He looked at me, using you as the ultimate leverage. What do? We end it. He pulled out his phone, pressing a contact. Gonzalo, bring Francisco to the study. Tell him I need to discuss the shipment arriving tomorrow. Mateo, if he suspects... He won't. Cold certainty filled his voice. He thinks he's too smart, too careful. He thinks I'm too distracted by you to notice. That arrogance will kill him. 20 minutes later, Francisco entered the study, his usual confident smile in place. Gonzalo followed, positioning himself by the door, blocking the exit. You wanted to see me, boss? I did. Mateo remained seated behind his desk, apparently relaxed. We need to discuss some irregularities I've noticed in the shipping manifests. Irregularities? Francisco's smile didn't waver, but I saw tension enter his shoulders. Missing inventory, unexplained delays, communications with parties I don't recognize. Mateo's tone remained conversational. At first, I thought it was simple incompetence. But then, Leonore found something interesting on your tablet. Francisco's gaze swiveled to me, and I saw calculation replace his friendly facade. The girl's been spying? I knew giving her ideas above her station would cause... Careful. Mateo's voice dropped to lethal softness. How you speak about her is how you speak about me. Remember that. Boss, whatever she told you, she showed me photographs of your messages, references to using her as leverage against me, coordination with Duarte's remaining associates. He stood, moving around the desk with predatory purpose. 15 years, Francisco. 15 years of loyalty I thought I could count on. What changed? For a moment, Francisco considered maintaining the lie. Then something shifted. Acceptance, perhaps, or relief that the pretense was over. Money changed. You pay well, but you're not the only one offering. He straightened, defiance entering his voice. I have a family to support, kids who need more than I can provide on what you give me. So you sold me out. I sold information, not you specifically, just opportunities, schedules, vulnerabilities. His gaze flickered to me again. Like her. Mateo moved faster than I'd seen, crossing the space and landing a punch that sent Francisco sprawling. She's not a vulnerability. She's the reason you're still breathing for this conversation. Blood streaming from his split lip, Francisco laughed. You've gone soft. The old Carvalho would have killed me already. But you hesitate because you don't want her to see that side of you. You're wrong. Mateo's voice held absolute certainty. I hesitate because I want her to understand justice, not just violence. There's a difference. He turned to me. Come here. I approached on unsteady legs, uncertain what he wanted. He guided me to stand beside him, facing Francisco. This man betrayed me, put you at risk, sold information that could have gotten people killed. His hand found mine. What do you think should happen to him? The question hung heavy. Francisco watched me with contempt, clearly expecting mercy born of softness. Gonzalo stood alert, awaiting orders. Mateo simply held my hand, giving me agency in this decision. I thought of the threats, the fear, the casual way Francisco had labeled me a weakness to be exploited. How his betrayal had endangered not just Mateo, but everyone in this house. He made his choice, I said quietly. Now he lives with the consequences. Mateo nodded, something like pride flickering in his expression. Gono malo. The security chief moved forward, and I looked away. Not from squeamishness, but from understanding that some things, once witnessed, couldn't be unseen. The sounds were brief. A scuffle, a gunshot, then silence. When I looked back, Francisco's body lay still. Mateo was already moving toward the door, his hand still holding mine. Come. You don't need to see this. We walked to my suite in silence. Inside, he pulled me close, and I felt tremors running through his powerful frame. Not fear, but the aftermath of adrenaline and anger. I'm sorry you had to be part of that. I'm not. I pulled back to meet his eyes. He would have used me to hurt you. I won't apologize for protecting what's mine. His kiss was desperate, claiming, seeking reassurance that I wasn't horrified by what I'd witnessed. I responded with equal fervor, showing him through touch what words couldn't express, that I accepted all of him, even the darkest parts. Later, lying in his arms as moonlight painted silver across the floor, he whispered, "You could still leave. I'd understand." I'm not going anywhere. I traced patterns on his chest. We're in this together now. Whatever comes. Whatever comes, he agreed, holding me tighter. Outside, the world continued its dangerous dance. But in this moment, we had each other, and for now, that was enough. The morning after Francisco's death brought an unsettling calm. I woke in Mateo's arms, his breathing deep and even, his face softened by sleep in ways it never showed during waking hours. For a moment, I allowed myself to simply watch him, this complicated man who'd claimed me, protected me, trusted me with his darkest truths. My hand moved unconsciously to trace the scar along his ribs, an old wound whose story I didn't know. His eyes opened, immediately alert despite the early hour. Morning. I started to pull away, but he held me close. Stay. Just a few more minutes. His voice held a vulnerability I rarely heard. These moments are rare. We lay tangled together as dawn light grew stronger, the outside world temporarily held at bay. But reality couldn't be postponed forever. Eventually, Gonavalo's knock interrupted our refuge. "Boss, we have a situation." Mateo sighed, pressing a kiss to my forehead before rising. "Duty calls." I watched him dress, the efficiency of someone who'd done this 1,000 times, transforming from the man in my bed to the armored strategist the world knew. White shirt, 4 buttons left undone, tailored pants, the subtle confidence that radiated from his every movement. "I'll be in meetings all morning," he said, pausing at the door. "Stay close to the house. Gonamalo will keep you informed." After he left, I bathed and dressed in one of the new outfits Isabel had selected. Silk blouse, tailored pants, shoes that whispered wealth with every step. The woman in the mirror looked elegant, composed, nothing like the exhausted housekeeper who'd arrived here 27 months ago. But beneath the polish, I was still Leonor Santos, still the woman who'd fled debt and desperation. The transformation was only surface deep. Or was it? I found Isabel in the kitchen, overseeing lunch preparations with her usual efficiency. She glanced up as I entered, approval flickering in her eyes. "The clothes suit you. How are you adjusting?" "I'm not sure yet." I accepted the coffee she offered. Everything's happened so quickly. That's his way. Once Miguel decides something, he moves with absolute commitment. She measured herbs with practiced precision. but I've never seen him decide on a person before. You're the first. That doesn't frighten you? That he suddenly got this... I gestured vaguely, searching for the right word. Weakness? Isabel supplied. No, because I've also seen how you affect him. He's happier, more present, less consumed by the constant vigilance that's defined him since his father died. She met my gaze directly. You're not a weakness, Leonore. You're his humanity restored. The words settled something restless inside me. Thank you. The morning passed in strange domesticity. I read in the library, explored the gardens under Gonomolo's watchful eye, tried to find my place in this new role. By noon, restlessness drove me back inside, seeking Matteo's presence. I found him in his study, surrounded by men in expensive suits discussing what sounded like legitimate business: shipping contracts, warehouse leases, distribution networks. He glanced up as I entered, something warming in his expression. Gentlemen, if you'll excuse me a moment. He rose, crossing to me with focused attention. Everything all right? Fine. I realized I had no good reason for interrupting. I wanted to see you. His smile was private, meant only for me. Give me 30 minutes, then we'll have lunch together. I nodded and retreated, feeling foolish for the interruption. But 30 minutes later, he appeared at my suite's door, loosening his tie as he entered. Alone at last. He pulled me close, and I felt tension drain from his frame. I've been thinking about you all morning. You were in meetings. I'm very good at multitasking. His mouth found mine, the kiss deepening until we were both breathless. What about lunch? I managed between kisses. Later. He guided me toward the bedroom. Right now, I need this. Need you. What followed was urgent, desperate. Two people seeking connection and affirmation in the most primal way. Afterward, lying tangled in sheets, I traced patterns on his chest while he played with my hair. Tell me something true, I said. Something you've never told anyone. He was quiet so long I thought he wouldn't answer. Then, I'm terrified of becoming like my father. What do you mean? He was brilliant, strategic, protective, everything I try to be. But the violence consumed him. By the end, he saw threats everywhere, trusted no one, lived in constant paranoia. His voice dropped. He pushed everyone away, including his own family, died isolated despite being surrounded by people. You're not him. How do you know? I've made the same choices, followed the same path. What's to stop me from ending up the same way? I shifted to look at him directly. Me. I'm what stops it. Because I won't let you disappear into paranoia and isolation. I'll pull you back every time. You sound very certain. I am. I kissed him softly. We're partners, remember? That means I see you. All of you. And I won't let you forget who you are beneath the armor. He pulled me closer, and I felt his heart beating against mine. I don't deserve you. Probably not. I smiled against his shoulder. But you're stuck with me anyway. We dozed briefly, wrapped in each other, the afternoon light painting gold across tangled limbs. When we finally rose, hunger drove us downstairs where Isabel had left a cold lunch in the dining room. So this is what people with money do, I observed, selecting from the spread of meats, cheeses, and fresh bread. Eat elaborate meals in the middle of the day. Is it strange, being on this side of service? Very. I assembled a plate. I keep wanting to clean up after myself, reset the table, wash the dishes. You don't have to do any of that anymore. I know. Intellectually, I know. But years of training don't disappear overnight. I met his eyes across the table. I'm still figuring out who Leonore Santos is when she's not defined by survival. Take your time. I'm not going anywhere. The afternoon brought unexpected visitors. 2 men in expensive suits claiming to represent a business consortium interested in partnerships. Gonzalo showed them to the formal sitting room while alerting Mateo. "Stay upstairs," he told me. I don't know these people. But curiosity drew me to the second-floor balcony where I could observe without being seen. The men were polished, professional, their body language suggesting corporate backgrounds rather than criminal ones. Yet something felt wrong, a tension beneath the courteous exteriors. Their conversation with Mateo was too quiet to hear clearly, but I caught fragments, references to consolidation and market opportunities and mutual benefit. Standard business language that could mean anything. Then one of them made a mistake. He turned slightly, and I saw the weapon holstered beneath his jacket. Not unusual for people in Mateo's world, except the holster position was wrong. Too accessible, too ready. This was someone who expected to draw quickly. I pulled out the phone Mateo had given me, texting quickly. Left visitor is armed. Holster position suggests military training, not civilian carry. His response came immediately. Good eye. Stay hidden. The meeting concluded within minutes, the visitors departing with handshakes and promises to be in touch. But Gonzalo's expression as he saw them out was grim. I found Mateo in his study, jaw tight with tension. Who were they really? I asked. Federal agents. Probably organized crime task force. He pulled me close. They're building a case, gathering evidence. That was a fishing expedition, seeing what I'd reveal in what I thought was a private meeting. But you knew. I suspected when they used the wrong terminology for one of our operations. Small slip, but telling. He sighed. This is what I meant about constant vigilance. Every conversation could be surveillance. Every new contact could be law enforcement. How do you live like this? Carefully. His arms tightened around me. And with as few attachments as possible, people you care about become vulnerabilities, leverage for prosecutors or enemies. I pulled back to meet his eyes. Do you regret? Never. The word was fierce. You're the best thing that's happened to me in years, worth any risk. Even prison? Even that. He touched my face gently, though I'd prefer to avoid it, for both our sakes. The reality of his world settled heavier on my shoulders. It wasn't just rival criminals we needed to worry about, but law enforcement, prosecutors, federal investigations. The careful empire he'd built could collapse from within or without at any moment. What do? We prepare. There are contingencies in place. Safe houses, offshore accounts, escape routes if necessary. He led me to his desk, pulling up files. I'm going to show you everything. Where the emergency funds are. Who to contact if I'm arrested. How to disappear if you need to. I won't need to disappear. If you go down, I go down with you. Absolutely not. His voice turned hard. If federal charges come, you'll claim coercion, ignorance, abuse. Whatever gets you clear, I'll support that story completely. That's ridiculous. I'm choosing this, and I'm choosing to protect you. His hands gripped my shoulders. Promise me, Leonor. If things go wrong, you save yourself. You don't try to be noble or loyal or any of that. You walk away. I can't promise that. Then I can't. He stopped, conflict warring across his features. Please. I need to know you'll be safe, whatever happens to me. I saw the fear beneath his demand. Not for himself, but for me. The same fear that had driven so many of his decisions since our relationship changed. All right, I said finally. If federal charges come, I'll protect myself. I promise. Relief flooded his expression. Thank you. He spent the next hour walking me through contingencies I hoped never to need. Bank accounts in false names. Contacts in various countries. documents that would hold up under scrutiny, the machinery of escape that he'd built in case his empire crumbled. By evening, my head spun with information. We ate dinner in his study, a private meal Isabel prepared, away from staff and surveillance. Just the two of us, stealing time before the world intruded again. "Do you ever wish for something simple?" I asked, watching firelight dance across his features. "A normal life without constant danger?" "I used to." He reached across the table for my hand. "Now I just wish for this. You and me, whatever time we can steal. That's enough." "Is it though? Really?" He considered the question seriously. "It has to be. Because wanting more, imagining different, that's how you break. You have to accept reality as it is, find peace within the constraints." "That sounds lonely." "It was. Before you." His thumb traced circles on my palm. "Now it's bearable. More than bearable." Later, we stood at his window, that eternal position, wrapped in each other's arms, watching darkness settle over the grounds. Outside those walls, federal agents built cases, rivals schemed revenge, 1,000 threats circled like wolves. But inside this room, we had each other, imperfect, complicated, bound by choices that couldn't be undone. "Whatever comes," I whispered against his chest. "Whatever comes," he agreed, holding me tighter. And in that moment, I understood that I'd stopped trying to escape, stopped seeing this as temporary. Somewhere along the way, Mateo's world had become my world. His battles, mine. His future, ours. The realization should have terrified me. Instead, it brought a strange peace. I'd spent years running from choices, from consequences, from the person poverty and desperation had tried to make me. Now I was finally standing still, choosing deliberately, becoming someone I could recognize in the mirror. Not just Leonor Santos, survivor, but Leonor Santos, partner to Miguel Carvalho. Woman who'd looked at darkness and decided to walk into it anyway, not from fear or desperation, but from choice. And if that choice led to danger, betrayal, even prison, at least it would be my choice, my consequence to bear, together. 3 months later, I stood beside Mateo at a charity gala, wearing a dress that cost more than my yearly former salary, diamond earrings glittering at my ears, gifts he'd insisted on despite my protests. Around us, the city's elite mingled, their conversations filled with business deals and political maneuvering. To the outside world, we were exactly what we appeared, a powerful man and the woman at his side. His partner in every visible way, though the depths of that partnership remained carefully hidden. But I caught the occasional glance, calculating, assessing, wondering how the housekeeper had become something more. Let them wonder. I'd learned to wear the role as comfortably as the expensive dress, meeting curious gazes with polite distance. "Ready?" Mateo murmured, his hand at the small of my back, as we moved toward another group of potential allies or enemies, sometimes impossible to tell the difference. "Always," I replied, leaning into his touch. Because whatever came next, federal investigations, rival threats, the constant dance of danger that defined his world, we would face it together. And I no longer wanted to be anywhere else.